What's up guys, how's it going? Toofty here, and ooh, interesting topic. Sorry about the kind of clickbaity title, you know, it is what we're going to be talking about today. And for those of you who've watched me for a long time, you'll know that I don't use clickbaity titles. For example, last week my video was called Swiftwater Sentry Spots, not Amazing Epic Swiftwater Secret Spots of Doom with some naked girls, or anything like that. So yeah, recently I made a video, Stickies versus Pipes, and it got a lot of interest, and I think that was because it sparked a bit of a debate, and so it got a bit of a discussion going, which was really interesting. So yeah, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this topic. Please bear in mind to begin with that this is completely based on opinion. It's just an opinion of an experienced TF2er who has played the game since it first came out, and this video is probably going to trigger your face off, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully it'll just spark a nice debate and get people chatting about this topic. So I've always wondered, you know, you think certain classes are quite easy to pick up, some classes are really hard to master. I've always admired scouts and spies because, you know, they're such vulnerable classes and they need a lot of skill to master in terms of their survivability. Although, you know, every single class has a very high skill ceiling. I wanted to get that out of the way first. But yeah, before we go into too much of the detail, I wanted to talk about how I'm going to look at this. I wanted to do it in kind of a sensible way and break up, firstly, how easy it is to pick up a class. If you're a complete noob, you pick up the game, how easy is it to play each of the classes? And secondly, how easy or hard it is to master a class. You know, what is their skill ceiling? And like I said, they're all very high, but I feel like some are higher than others. So yeah, just for fun, I'm going to illustrate my thoughts. And I just want to reiterate that whatever class you main, you can be amazing. They all have a pretty high skill ceiling. And that's one of the reasons this game has such longevity and I'm still playing after so long, is because there's so much to learn. So yeah, let's take a look at these illustrations. Okay, so first we're going to look at how easy is it for a class to be picked up by a new player. Now even this there are two sides of. There's people who are new to the game and there are people who are new to the first person shooter genre. For the sake of this, I assume that, you know, most people have played first person shooters before and roughly know how to walk around and shoot people. So yeah, I'm going to go through each of the classes in the order they appear on the class selection screen, starting with Scout. I alluded to this already, but I think Scout's a tricky one to pick up. And this is purely because he's just so squishy. Even though the core mechanics of this class are fairly simple in that you're kind of dodging, you're running around and you're shooting, I still think it's a tricky one to kind of pick up just because if you're new to the game, you won't know what the threats are and you're just going to get demolished very quickly. Okay, so next is Soldier. I think Soldier can be fairly easy to pick up because you've got both the simple mechanics of pointing and shooting with your rockets. You also got a bit of splash damage, so if you're a rubbish shot, you're probably going to help your team a little bit, and he's got a decent amount of health too. So yeah, I'm going to put him kind of here. I think it'd be fairly safe to say that Pyro's quite easy to pick up for a beginner, and that is because, well, the joke is you can WM1, right? Even if you're not very good at ambushing, air blasting, you can at least occasionally run towards the enemy and get a little bit of damage out. So fairly easy, I would say, in terms of entry level. So Demoman, I would actually say, is very similar to Soldier. I'd actually say he's slightly trickier to pick up than Soldier just because the stickies take a little bit of thought and the pipes are, I don't know, it's a tricky one. Maybe harder to hit than rockets, or maybe not, to be honest. It depends if the new user knows that you should shoot at the ground as a soldier, I think. But yeah, they're very similar anyway. So yeah, Heavy I would put at the lower end of the spectrum because he's got a huge health pool, so he's going to last quite a while, and a new player can put out a decent amount of damage without really knowing too much about the game. Okay, so NG I think is a trickier one because if you're not familiar with the idea of creating buildings, you won't know the importance of, say, a teleporter or a dispenser, and you'll have little idea where to build as well, so I'm going to put him up there. Medic, his primary weapon locks onto a target. You don't have to worry so much about mechanical skill in that respect, but at the same time you're probably going to die a lot. You're not going to know, you know, which battles to avoid and whereabouts to be positioned. Now Sniper again is a very mechanical class, and on the one hand you can forever be improving your aim, your accuracy, but for example if you are someone who's played a first person shooter before, picking up a sniper should be fairly simple really because you're just pointing and shooting. I think the gist of it would be easy to get your head around. And finally, Spy. Now I would whack him right at the top, personally speaking. If you've just picked up the game, getting to grips with his cloak, his disguises, the various knives, all that fancy stuff, and for him to be a bit of a squishy character as well, I think most people would agree that he's the trickiest one to pick up to begin with. So yeah, this is kind of my final running order. The absolute exact position of them I'm not 100% confident about, but approximately this feels right to me. And I've noticed these kind of three groups forming. So yeah, these groups kind of make sense to me, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Okay, so the second part of this is looking at the ultimate skill ceiling of the class. So how hard is it to master each of these classes? Notice that the scale starts at hard because it's hard to master any class. So yeah, what we're trying to do here is look at these more in context of each other, comparatively. It's more like, is class A harder or easier to master than class B? And let's start by looking again at the Scout. I would say he's slightly easier to master than some of the other classes. But yeah, I'll carry on and we can talk a bit more about it at the end. Soldier, I would say, jumps up in the fact that because of the rocket jumping mechanic, I don't play enough Soldier to be super confident about this, but I'm pretty sure you can learn some super fancy rocket jumping techniques, and so mastering those is, I would have thought, very tricky. So I've put him kind of further up the spectrum. Pyro, I think again he's moved slightly up the spectrum as to where he was in terms of the entry level. I would put him somewhere in the middle. Now Demoman, for the same reasons as the Soldier, there are countless tricks you can do with sticky jumping, and so I'd put him kind of somewhere towards the top of the spectrum. Heavy's the only one I've put in the exact same place. Again, remember, this doesn't mean it's easy to master, but in comparison to some of the others, I would say slightly quicker to master, perhaps, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. NG jumps down quite a bit. I'll talk a bit more about this in a sec. Medic, I've actually put at the very top. Again, I don't play loads of Medic, but my understanding is that he's one of the hardest classes to master. If there are any Medic mains watching, I would love to get your thoughts on this and if you agree with me. Next up is Sniper, and he's dropped down a little bit just because, as I discussed before, he's very mechanical. All you can do really is get more accurate with him, and you can pretty much do that infinitely, but perhaps there's not as many fancy tricks and special mechanics you can master with him. And last but not least, Spy. I would say he's very difficult to pick up, but in terms of mastering him, there are other classes that have more to learn than him. Again, the exact positioning, not massively confident on, but roughly speaking, this makes sense to me. And again, there are kind of some groups forming, the classes that are slightly easier to master and the classes that I think have loads of fancy mechanics that you continue to learn pretty much forever. A couple of little things of interest I wanted to point out. The first one was that how this middle clump that are fairly easy to pick up shift over to the right and become really hard ones to master, I think. For me, the main reason is sticky and rocket jumping mechanic. One very quick thing I wanted to mention about the NG, his basic game mechanics are very different from pointing and shooting, and I think that takes a little bit of time to get your head around, but I think once you're a pretty competent NG, you can sort of start to reach that skill ceiling a bit quicker. Maybe I was a little bit ungenerous with him, because I guess, yeah, there is the sentry jump, but on the other hand, it can almost be considered a little bit of a gimmick. The solid gameplay will be finding decent positions, again, survivability, looking after your sentry and your base, and supporting your team. Some of the other ones that moved around quite a bit, I find that most people tend to underestimate how tricky it is to master the Pyro. Scout drops down a little bit, but not too much. Similar reasons as before, once you got the hang of dodging and shooting. Obviously, I'm not saying it's easy to do, but it's just one or two simple things to kind of focus on. And yeah, finally, Spy, very difficult to master like all of them. But yeah, the only reason he dropped down for me is because these other three classes I felt belonged on the very far right of this graph. Now, just when you thought I hadn't been controversial enough, don't worry, I'm now going to talk about how fun each class is to play. This is even more subjective than before. And of course, every single class is fun to play. It's Team Fortress, it's the best. So yeah, just for fun, I thought I'd put all the classes in order in terms of how much fun I find them, but yeah, purely my opinion, and here it is. See what I did there? A little bit of a funny joke for you guys there, hope you enjoyed that. In reality, it's probably a little bit more like this. As you are all probably aware, Demoman is my main, NG is my second favourite class to play. Sniper, Soldier and Scout are all very close, to be honest, and the only reason Spy drops below those is because I'm rubbish at him. And again, this could be controversial, but I think the last three there are, for me, the least fun to play, especially Heavy. I've spoken about this in the past, that's why I think he should have some really fun new weapons added to him. So yeah, what do you think about that? Commence raging. But yeah, seriously, I would love to know your opinion. Either if there's something very specific you think I've gotten completely wrong, or if you agree with all of it or some of it, or alternatively, it could be interesting if you kind of comment below with what you think is the very hardest class to learn and master, and the very easiest class. And I wonder if there's any way of actually knowing in a more scientific way. I guess you could find out which classes are played by beginners the most often, or something like that. I remember back in the day I started off by playing Heavy, and at some point I transitioned on to Demoman. I have no idea how that worked. I must have just been kind of rotating through all the classes. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found some of it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.